Oh,
Oh,
nice.
that's new.
Wow. When did she start doing that? All right.
I don't
Well,
know. Wait,
hey,
I have to hit continue now here. It's asking me to stay in. I will continue.
all
There
right.
we go.
Oh, hey, now you've just learned about the surveillance state efforts by Zoom recording here on the Financial Survival Network. You're watching us. I'm Kerry Lutz. John Rubino is with us. Well, we have much to talk about. Well, first, cryptos. I don't know if there's any other stories. They've all been squeezed off of the homepage, that's for sure. Whether you should be buying cryptos on the dip or selling them for before the crash, a lot of things to talk about there. Do you think cryptos are crashing? Do you think they're going to go lower? Why don't you tell us? Ethereum was up nicely today, back over 2,500. Just send an email to kl@kerrylutz.com. So happy Monday, John, and cryptos. What the heck is going on with cryptos here when you can't even figure out what the value of a cryptocurrency is on the, it's not worth the paper it's not printed on. You got to wonder what's going on here in the world.
Hey, Kerry. Well, yeah, there's a little volatility in that market, you would have to say. We just came through probably the well, for sure, the biggest dollar decline in Bitcoin ever, because it's never been as high as it was, but it lost $30,000. Bitcoin did per coin in the space of like a week, and now it's bouncing back. So this is looking partially temporary, at least. Same thing with Ethereum. It lost 50%. Went from 4,000 to 2,000, and now it's bouncing back up. But a lot of things happen. China basically is attempting to ban cryptos just in general across the board, and that's one more official attack on cryptos. There have been others out there. India tried to do something similar to China's, and you've got Janet Yellen and Christine Lagarde kind of preparing the ground for some kind of attack from the US and Europe on crypto. So it's got that market pretty spooked. And we'll see where it goes. I personally put some low ball bids in this week. I'm now bidding for Bitcoin at $10,000 and Ethereum at $1,500. So we'll see that. We need another week like last week to get there, but why not? Why couldn't there be another week like last week? So we'll see. But there are two possibilities going forward with cryptos. One is that this is just a normal correction for instance, Bitcoin. It's already gone from 1,200 down to 200, then back up to 15,000, then down to 3,000, then back to 60,000, and now down to 30-ish thousand in the 30s just this last week. So this is normal in one sense. In the other sense, what governments are trying to do are fairly new in the sense that that it's happening in a really high-profile way with a lot of different countries at the same time. So that might be kind of a sea change in the development of cryptos, and we'll have to see. It's an emerging asset class. Governments still have to take their positions in them, decide what they think about cryptos and whether they're a risk and how they're going to deal with it. All that still has to happen. So there's absolutely no way to predict short-term moves in this market. And it's very hard to predict the long-term outcome of all this because we just don't know what all these guys are going to do. Nobody expected China to do what they did last week, or at least when they did it. And I suspect the US and Europe are going to do things that catch people off guard too. So volatility going forward in cryptos, yes, I think we can expect that, but that's the only thing we absolutely can expect.
Well, to be fair here, this is the second call of a Bitcoin crash that I've made in the past 4 years, 3.5 years, and I've been right on both of them. And the greatest thing is, it's at a peak, it's at a bubble when people start getting cultish about their cryptos. And I'm not saying that if you're buying cryptos, you're part of a cult. What I'm saying is when you start believing that that if you drink that Kool-Aid, you're going to go to heaven and maybe meet 72 virgins, you're part of a cult. All right. When you believe that something can only go up and not go down, and you believe in it wholeheartedly with all of your every drop of your essence, you are a cultist. And these people believe that it could do nothing but go up, John, and it's demonstrated in the past. It is susceptible to crashes. My gut feel is that it probably could go down to 20,000, and you might just get your stink bid uh, build at 10. I'm not saying I can't predict how low it's going to go, but you got to realize Charles Nenner said it best. Bitcoin only trades on emotion because, for the simple reason, John, there are no fundamentals. What is the fundamental of the Bitcoin thing? Um, I like it. I own it. I've owned it before. I've not made enough money to retire on it. My bad. But just because I'm a lot worse at picking bottoms doesn't mean I'm no good at picking tops. And I picked them both here, John. So I'm just patting myself on the back here because I knew this was coming, especially when I get blowback. Oh, it's just FUD. And nobody can explain why it went down. I can explain why because it's human psychology. But really, cryptos are the tail wagging the economic dog. What is really perhaps distressing, but certainly worthy of your attention, are these shortages popping up, John. Everything, the supply chain is in shambles, and it could take months or years, or maybe it's never going to go back to the way it was. Everything is in short supply, lumber, you name it. I mean, you've been picking up the stories on this, John.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, maybe it's transitory and it's just, bottlenecks because we had all these weird lockdowns for a whole year. And maybe it's something more fundamental. But the stories are out there and they're kind of like a daily occurrence. Now, for instance, just this morning, I popped 3 different stories up in the dollarcollapse.com links list. One of them was just a general story about how businesses are panic buying supplies because they don't know if they're going to be able to maintain inventory in a consistent way. So they're stockpiling now, which is, in a lot of ways, a really bad thing because that's very expensive. It's an expensive way to run your business by keeping a warehouse full of stuff sitting around waiting to be turned into things you can sell. And then the specific stories are kind of funny, actually, in a way. For instance, Chick-fil-A has run out of its sauce. And I don't exactly know what that means because I have never eaten a Chick-fil-A, but they must have some kind of special sauce they put on their chicken sandwiches. They're out of it, and so they're in
McDonald's.
Yeah,
just remember 2 all beef patties, special sauce, those onions on a sesame seed bun. So if it's really special, maybe they can borrow it from McDonald's, right?
I think McDonald's was ketchup and mayonnaise, but don't quote me on that. And then the agriculture industry is having trouble shipping stuff because it can't find enough wood pallets because that's how it stacks and then ships a lot of products. And so they're stuck because they don't have the right shipping equipment. And these are weird things to run out of when you think about it, right? I mean, how can you not have enough pallets? The world is, go back behind any Walmart and you'll see stacks of pallets. But apparently there aren't enough of them for the agricultural industry to get produce to stores. So, and that goes on top of labor shortages and chip shortages, and it just goes on and on. We're building a house, and it's not automatic now to get a refrigerator, for instance, delivered on the day you want to move into your house. That's just not how it works anymore. You go get on a list, and they give you a general time, like somewhere in somewhere in June, you will get your refrigerator, but they can't guarantee it, and they can't guarantee the one you want. And it's not because everything's out of supply. It's usually because like one microchip or one panel or something like that is just unavailable because there's a kink in the supply chain. So yeah, this is a world that we haven't seen really since, I guess, the 1970s, right? When there were oil shortages, but I don't remember any big shortages since that time. And the fact that it's so widespread is, it's ominous. Maybe it all goes away in 2 weeks, or maybe this is a sign of a very serious breakdown. Maybe it's the peak complexity thing where these global supply chains just turned out to be unmanageable. We built these things that we cannot manage going forward. And we're going to have to radically simplify. We'll see. This is all stuff that we'll find out in the next couple of years.
Hey, so I got a good thing. Like if you graduated from college and you're drowning in a sea of student loan debt. I got it. I got the way for you to get out. It's so simple now. And now that you explained the appliance shortage, get a job at Best Buy and make friends with the dispatcher and because look, you would pay another $250 to $350 to get that refrigerator now instead of 6 months, right?
Possibly, yeah.
Like you probably would, because who wants an empty space? You'll be having what do you call it? Ice chests, and you'll have to get ice in there. It'll be like a cooler. You'll have to have like Yetis all over your kitchen to store stuff. So you pay the guy $350 extra. He splits it with the dispatcher, and they take the other person's order and they send it to you. And if he could do that enough times, you can make some decent money here, becoming the ultimate resource allocator.
So Kerry, this is really important what you just said, because what you just described is a black market. And that's the way usually socialist societies, but any kind of wildly inefficient, non-functional society ends up working, is where you have fixers that you got to go to, and you got to bribe to get anything you want done on time and efficiently. And we're not that far from that. We're at the point now where that literally sounds like a good job, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're enterprising. Most of them can't figure it out, but maybe you have to be the department manager who can fix stuff. It's like Soviet Russia. You wanted. It's what happens in Cuba.
Well, exactly. So we, the capitalist West, are starting to think in terms of socialist countries now, where there's shortages of everything, and you have to scam your way to life's necessities. So, the fact that we're joking around with this that's probably the most scary thing that we've said in this whole talk of all the scary things that are going on out there. But the fact that we're becoming a society in which you have to pay bribes to get things if you want them on time.
That you used to just buy and get delivered same day, right?
I mean, that's your birthright as an American. You just call somebody and the thing you want shows up at your house. No questions asked. No money changes hands.
No
it's
money.
Completely above board. Yeah. And it may not be that way anymore.
Interest free for 12 months. They just give it to you. Hey,
yeah.
China, the way they're dealing with rising commodity prices is they're starting a terror campaign against those evil capitalists within China who are price gouging, because they have no conceptual understanding of why prices fluctuate. As far as they're concerned, prices should only stay the same or go down. They don't understand inflation, and they don't understand shortages, and that shortages automatically lead to higher prices. In Florida here, I got to tell you this story. So, the whole pipeline shut down, and I'm reading Zero Hedge, and it says Florida is getting affected. And I didn't do my research, but it's 2 a.m. Florida's gas station's starting to run out of gas here, but northern Florida, southern Florida gets barges, and we have tank farms in Fort Lauderdale and places. So it shipped in here. So it didn't apply, but I went out at 2 a.m. I said, man, I got to go to Fort Lauderdale tomorrow. I don't have enough gas to make it. I filled up at 2 a.m. Nobody's there, just me. And as it turned out, and then when I went to Fort Lauderdale coming back, I topped it off, all unnecessary. So a lot of times you're hoarding, and your supply chain there's really nothing wrong with it except the perception of the public that the supply chain has broken down. And if you don't watch out for number one now, you're going to be SOL.
And here's, from a macro view, why that is terrible, what you just described, because your time is valuable, Kerry. You produce something of value when you sit down and work. Now, to the extent that you got to get up at 2 a.m. and go buy gas, that's time that you're not producing anything. So expand that across 350 million people, and all of a sudden you get a much poorer country, because we're not doing the productive stuff we could be doing with our time, because we're trying to track down some, life's necessity thing. We used to joke about the whole toilet paper thing in the Soviet Union. We've seen toilet paper shortages in the last year, and we've seen gas lines, like you were saying. So it piecemeal, but it is heading in that direction.
Yeah, well, we're going to see the people lined up with the digital wheelbarrows, trying to cash in their tether because I don't know if you caught the article in Zero Hedge, but it was quoting another article, somebody who really like looked under the hood, and they give away this tether stuff and then they use the tether to buy Bitcoin, and then they sell the Bitcoin and get cash. And evidently Tether is a Ponzi scheme, but we're going to have to follow up that story. I don't know if it's correct. It seemed to make sense, but in any event, yeah, digital wheelbarrows could become all the rage. Just like in Germany, you needed a wheelbarrow for your marks to go buy a loaf of bread. You're going to need a digital wheelbarrow for all your cryptocurrency that got inflated out of existence. At least some of it is. But hey, got a couple other things. So now it appears that there may have been a leak at the Wuhan biological warfare lab in China that led to COVID-19. And Dr. Fraudchi, he's been trying to cover this thing up, but he just was forced to admit the possibility. And we were like subsidizing this lab. What the heck is going on here?
Well, I have personally a personal story to start this. I've been yelled at by liberal friends before when I just tossed out, some throwaway line like, yeah, and we don't even know where this virus came from, whether it came from a military lab or from a pig farm or whatever. And they just screamed at me, did you get that off Fox News? Of course it's natural. It wasn't, and they were really tied into the idea that it was not from that lab because Trump said it was. So whatever Trump said, they had to vehemently disagree with, even though they had no idea, I had no idea, none of us had any idea where the virus came from at that time. There were rumors, lots of rumors swirling around, but that was it. And now it turns out that even the guys in charge don't necessarily know anything yet, but they're being pulled kicking and screaming to the admission that maybe it came from the Wuhan lab. And this thing that we talked about before we started here about Wuhan scientists from that lab going to the hospital with really serious symptoms in November, before the pandemic hit. Yeah, so that's not exactly a smoking gun, but it's halfway to incontrovertible proof. We got to find out what those guys had. But you know what? If people from a lab show up at a hospital, if several people from a lab show up at a hospital, that's a scary thing, right? Because by definition, if you're working on some experimental virus and you catch it and you go to the hospital, you are now spreading that thing out to the public, right? So that's what those guys did by going to the hospital. So anyhow, it's
really irresponsible. Really irresponsible,
Yeah.
We don't have proof yet. And people are telling me early on, and it appeared that there was possible it could have come from the lab, but I didn't want to say that it definitely did. But now the evidence is mounting. People who actually know about this stuff, who can read DNA, to say this type of virus can't occur naturally in nature. I don't know if it's so or not, but there's enough of a dispute now that I'm willing to consider the possibility. I never shot it down. I just said, there's no evidence yet. I want to see the evidence of it. But now we're getting the evidence, and I don't see any denying it. And people have been deplatformed from social media for bringing this up for the past year. This was totally verboten, John, on social media. And now it's like that guy. He was the I don't remember whose Secretary of Housing he was, but they accused him of taking bribes in Newark, New Jersey, and I'm sure there's a good chance he did, but they couldn't convict him. And then at the end, he says, "Where do I go to get my reputation back?" It's kind of sad. So where do these social media guys go to get their accounts back?
Well, if it turns out that the virus did come from a lab, that is going to be the end of the credibility of a huge section of the political and healthcare establishment and the corporate social media. Because like you said, those guys were banning people from Twitter and Facebook for disagreeing with the establishment narrative. And if it turns out the establishment narrative turns out to have been false and those guys were right all along, there has to be some kind of a reckoning from that, because you cannot have Silicon Valley geeks taking orders from the capital E establishment and censoring regular people in an unconstitutional way. That cannot be right and has to be punished in some way. So we'll see. It could come out in the next couple of months that yes, the virus did come from the Wuhan lab. Everybody admits it now. And then what happens? I think the interesting part is what happens afterwards when we have to apportion blame for the censorship. And we'll see. It's going to be fun to watch.
And what happens to China? Really, they should become a pariah nation. And Trump was pushing him in that direction anyway. This could just be totally over the top.
Well, Kerry, here's part of the problem with that. The U.S. was apparently funding that research. So it happened in China, but if the U.S. was a part of it in some material way, then there's a lot of blame to go around. It's not just China who did it. Yeah. So again, we'll see. Who knows?
And the intelligence report that was supposedly leaked this weekend, we don't know if it's true or not, but supposedly well-placed intelligence people said that employees, staff at the lab were seen in hospitals with the disease with very similar symptoms to COVID. So we'll keep track of that story. So Tesla in Norway was found guilty of throttling the charging speed and battery capacity of their cars with an upgrade, because you get these over-the-air upgrades, and they're going to have to pay every Tesla owner of the S and the X, I don't know how many there are, $16,000 each, pending appeal, of course, and I'm sure they'll win the appeal. Stuff kind of happens, and I just thought it was a really kind of amusing story, John.
Wasn't Norway their biggest market for a while? It was one of the Scandinavian countries where they were the biggest selling car. So it could be a lot of cars. I don't know. But you know what? Their stock price is up today, Tesla's. So that means that the investing public, to the extent that they have any sense at all when it comes to tech stocks, doesn't see this as too big of a story. But it sounds like it might be a lot of money. But maybe, like you said, maybe everybody expects the verdict to be overturned or cut way back or something like that. But
10,000 cars is 160 million. 100,000 cars is 1.6 billion. Tesla recently had 20 billion in the bank. Not going to be a material hit. Well, but can't let it go because it's a real kind of black eye for the image of the company.
Well, you know what? 1.6 billion is $1.6 billion more than they've ever made making cars. So in the context of their bottom line, it's a pretty big number, I guess.
Do you think they can pay the fine in Bitcoin, John?
They have about that much Bitcoin.
Hey,
so they could just sign their Bitcoin over to Norway. Yeah,
they could do that. But I think based on, you have to speak Elon Musk, all right? And at one point he said they sold it. At another point he said, no, we still hold it, but we should sell it. Indeed, that was one of his things. It's obvious to me that the master of coin at Tesla, he's the CFO. He also took on the added responsibilities of master of coin. They've been selling futures contracts when it hit in the 60s. And therefore, when you sell those contracts and you have your spread locked in, you can report it as a profit, but you don't have to say that you actually parted with your Bitcoin, right? Isn't it kind of brilliant?
Sounds criminal to me, frankly, because the insider trading laws have to apply here somehow, some way. And there's an even bigger example. I mean, Elon Musk and Tesla seem to have committed a lot of insider trading violations with Bitcoin and other stuff. But Cathie Wood is my favorite example of talking your book to the point that it becomes insider trading. You know, when Tesla tanked a while ago and they bought, Cathie Wood's mutual fund bought a ton of Tesla towards the bottom, actually towards not far from where it is right now, but towards the bottom of their last correction previous to this one. And then after they'd done all that buying, she came out and said, well, our new price target for Tesla is 3,000, which was 6 times the current price. and the stock went back up because of that. But, that cannot be legal. You can't be allowed to do stuff like this. And maybe you are under securities laws as they're set up. But it seems like this is yet another thing that will destroy the confidence that people have in the big systems that are supposed to be taking care of us once everybody understands what's happening. Because these kinds of games, maybe they're not technically illegal, but they're certainly unethical. And you see them everywhere, but in the tech world and in the cryptocurrency world more than any place else.
They will, but as far as cryptos go, they're unregulated markets, all except when you do initial coin offerings. But outside of that, they're totally unregulated.
Well, okay, but Kerry, if it's part of your public company's balance sheet and you start doing stuff with it and then announcing it afterwards, isn't that trading on material information? If you knew you were going to do that tweet afterwards or something, it seems like that's a gray area at least. And if you're a mutual fund and you buy a bunch of stuff and then you say an outlandish thing to make that stuff go up, and knowing you were going to say that, isn't that material inside information that anybody else could have traded on if they'd known you were going to make that announcement? I don't know. It seems like it is, though.
Here's the deal. There's a rule promulgated by the SEC a while back, and the rule is do not mess with people on the spectrum. Bad afterwards. You can't mess with them because, they got a disability. So,
that's right. That would be ableist, on the part of our regulators if they did something like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you can't do that. I mean, really. It didn't used to be that way. If you were a thief, you were a thief. But now you got all sorts of reasons.
See, Kerry, you're joking about this, but it's kind of one of the next steps in our current process, right? Companies hiring people with disabilities as their CEO, so they can't be criticized.
Yeah, you're just being racist, or you're being, you're discriminating against people with a mental affliction, whatever. It's becoming part of our folklore. Hey, 2 things. So we got Gestapogretchen. She was partying down after she had an order in place in Michigan, telling people no more than 6 people who have the same name in one party. She's there with dozens of people, not a mask to be found. The CDC has already said if you're immunized, no masks necessary. So I think what this raises to me, there's 2 heroes who have emerged from COVID, in my estimation. Obviously, one is Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, because he was like Moses. He crossed the Red Sea and he freed the people, right? He just set us all free, mostly free. We still had mask mandates, but finally he even got rid of that. And the other guy is Rand Paul, because he's the guy who ripped apart Dr. Fauci. He's the guy who's had confrontations with Fauci. No one else would do it. He did it, and he led to other people doing it as well. 2 heroes, because the other thing is about vaccines and all that. If you've had COVID, you have very little chance of getting it again. And if you do, it's probably going to be a minor case. Not impossible, but your odds are probably lower than if you have the vaccine. And yet, what does the CDC say? Get vaxxed even if you had COVID. And it might not be good to get vaxxed if you've had COVID. And, when you look at this, he's the only one that would stand up and say anything about it. No one else. Everybody else has just let them run amok, take away our freedoms, do whatever they wanted. He's the one that said, screw the mask. I had COVID. I'm not getting it again, and I'm not wearing the mask. It's real hard to tell a United States senator, you got to put your mask on. And he just hasn't taken any crap from them. So 2 heroes from the whole COVID epidemic, John.
Yeah, I think if there was a presidential election this week, Ron DeSantis would probably win 52-48 against anybody the Democrats would throw at him, just because it seems to be working, what he's doing. And he didn't sacrifice Florida's economy, unlike a lot of other places. And, Gretchen Whitmer, well, she's not the only one who's done this, though, but it seems like the political class literally, sincerely does not believe the rules apply to them, because they just do this over and over again. The governor of California did it, went to some really high-end restaurant while he was shutting down all the other restaurants, and now Gretchen Whitmer does the same thing. And I don't know, because I mean, it's their rules. They must know what the rules are, right? But they just can't get over this idea that they should be bound by the same rules as the peasants. Feels like an aristocracy here, doesn't it? These guys literally don't think they have to abide by the same rules as everybody else, while they think up and impose those rules.
Draconian rules. Well, the old saying, rules for thee, but not for me. And finally, you brought this story to our attention here. CLOs flying off the shelf. So they're repackaging subprime corporate debt, and through the alchemy of rating agencies, what happens, John?
Well, just to refresh everybody's memory, the last crash in 2008 was caused by banks lending money to subprime borrowers for mortgages. Then they would package those things up into bonds and sell those bonds to gullible pension funds and bond funds. And they eventually crashed, and almost took down the entire global financial system. Well, now the corporate variant of that is being sold at record levels, CLOs, collateralized loan obligations, which is, like you said, where a bank makes a loan to a subprime company, one that would be borrowing via junk bonds in a different market. And then the bank bundles a bunch of loans like that together, turns them into bonds, gets them rated AAA by bribing Moody's or Fitch or somebody like that, and then selling them to those same credulous bond funds and pension funds. So we're doing the same thing again, which is one more sign that we're at the peak of a bubble here. There are like 8 other major bubble signals being sent out there right now, but this is another one. This is one I didn't even know what was happening, but now CLOs are being created at record levels, and this year will be the biggest year ever if it keeps up in the second half as it did in the first half. So here we are again, and when it blows up, this will be one of the things that we look at and go, oh, we should have seen that at the time,
Yeah, no doubt, and it's exactly the same mechanism as the subprime mortgage crisis. You take enough excrement and you put it into a nice box. And if it's a blue box from Tiffany's, it's even better. And then you can sell it as if it was gold, even though it's worthless. And this crap is worthless. They'll get 25 cents on the dollar in bankruptcy court if they're lucky. This, just like the SPACs, the exact same kind of concept, just blank check companies always make their reappearance at the peak of a market. And I think that's it for today, John. So go take a look at John's site if you haven't already, dollarcollapse.com. Got a free newsletter there, just like us, at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. John, we will catch up with you next week. I'm sure there will be no shortage of material.
Thanks, Kerry. See ya.